Hamas invaded Israel on the 7th of October. What was your initial reaction to that?
I don't believe they did today, Hamas.
I think so. Honestly, like, I think I need to be a bit more clued up on like everything that's going on. So I feel like I'm not really qualified to answer that too well.
I mean, I'm not sure if I've seen anything that shows that that's actually happened or actually correct.
هادي علي انزل 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 لك القادم الزر الزر هات اغراض هات اغراض دروع ارمي اي استنى وين هاد تعال ما حس ومال بس تضلك ذكرني المكان هذاك دخل جوا اجا تمام ايه يا علي ايش تدخل يا هاد؟
They attacked by air, land and sea, taking Israel by surprise during a major Jewish holiday. Now, 13 and a half hours after Hamas launched its audacious assault, Israel says it's at war, and Palestinians are already paying a heavy price. Airstrikes raining down on Gaza, and a warning that electricity supplies to the Strip will be cut. The attack began at daybreak with thousands of rockets fired from Gaza, hitting Ashkelon, Beersheba, and as far away as Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. At the same time, dozens of Hamas fighters crossed the heavily fortified border in at least 7 places. They infiltrated Sderot and other southern towns and villages, gunning down civilians, torching homes and taking hostages, including in the Ofakim and Be'eri kibbutzes. Since then, the Israeli Defense Force has been engaged in gun battles with Hamas in numerous locations. And it's been hitting back hard, bombing Hamas targets, high-rise buildings and health facilities in the densely populated Gaza Strip.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
I'm doing good. Good to see you. Good to see everyone out there. Welcome back to another episode.
Yeah, a lot going on in the world. Israel, Palestine, the war, protesters at the universities. What do you think about that?
Well, where they protest? Who's paying them to protest? It always seems all through the years that people show up in protests. You hear stories about them showing up in buses. And someone's paying these people to be what they call actors.
Yep.
And they come and they yell and scream. And there's a lot of videos out on YouTube where smart people are walking up to these so-called protesters, and then they start asking them some questions. In essence, hardball questions. What are you protesting? Why? What do you know about what you're protesting about? And these people confess they know nothing. Hogan, they know nothing.
No, but yeah, the video just played. Remember the 2 college students was asked by this reporter, why are you guys protesting? Do you remember that Hamas attacked Israel? They're all, no, we didn't know that. At the beginning of the segment, a lot of protesters, they don't know what they're protesting. They don't know, they haven't heard about the news that Hamas attacked Israel October 7th, 2023. I also heard that these guys were on drugs, and so that they wouldn't be sympathetic, you know, when they go across the border, because they're trained to kill the Jews. Isn't that sad?
It's stems from the ultimate Jew hater, Satan.
Yeah. So Palestine, is that a true nation?
If you study history, what was the land? Even before Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were in the land, it was the land of Canaan, the land of milk and honey.
The promised land.
Then it became, during the height of national Israel, King Saul, King David, King Solomon, 120 years of national Israel as a power, where they were from the Mediterranean. It's a large expanse of land, not the river to the sea as the so-called protesters call for today. The Jewish people has been their home, and the nation, the area that has been called Palestine, wasn't called Palestine until like 130 AD by the Romans, when they called it Philistia. Excuse my accent there, because the Romans were so incensed at a second Jewish rebellion. I think it was called the Bar Kokhba rebellion in 130 AD. The Romans kicked some serious butt.
Yeah.
And they changed the name of Jerusalem to Aelina Capitolina, after one of the Caesar's mothers, I think. And they wanted to wipe out every vestige of Jewish origin to the place. And they had the Bible, they had the Torah from before the time of Christ. They knew who the Philistines were, because as we have today, you have ghost stories today, you have stories of giants today. We have movies that have giants in them. So they knew about the giants in the land back in the day. And one of those giants, of course, was Goliath, who was a Philistine. Well, it depends what side of the river you're from. You know, Frankenstein,
Palestine, Philistine.
So if you think about it, the Romans named the land Philistina. The British kept it up as Palestine. 1964, January of, Yasser Arafat and his cronies created the Palestinian Liberation Organization.
Yeah.
But that was January of 1964. Who had been in the land as a nation since May 14th of 1948?
The Jews.
Israel, which David Ben-Gurion, the first president of Israel, using, I believe it was the book of Isaiah, he said in his address from the King David Hotel when they became a nation, he was taking it from the Bible that we're going to call our nation Israel. And, you know, when you look at stuff going on in the Bible and people asking, are we in the end times? You know, Jesus said that those who see these things happen, that generation shall not pass until all things be fulfilled.
Yeah.
So here we are. We've got Israel in the land since 1948. So now if you go use your finger math here, you know, 48, so 58, 68, 78, 88, 98, 08, 18, 70 years. And now we're in 24, so add 6. So we're 76 year of Israel coming up here in about 2 weeks. Look at the calendar. May 14th is a Tuesday, looking at my calendar on the wall. And that will be the 76th birthday of Israel.
Yeah.
And listening to a guy bantering about different generation marks in the Bible, pretty much you see 40, 50, 70, and 100 year marks of a generation in the Word of God. So we've blown through 40, we've blown through 50, we're past 70. So that would be a pretty good bet that within 100, you know, the 100th year of Israel being back in the land, you know, you could see all these things fulfilled. But you got to remember, we got to occupy till he comes.
Yeah, in 1948, Israel became a nation, right?
Correct.
And a lot of people a lot of educated people who came out of the university system are not being taught that. They're not being taught that Israel was in the land about 4,000 years ago or 3,500 years ago, and what they're being taught in the universities is how do you say it? Colonialism.
Colonialism.
Yeah, anti-colonialism. They believe Israel took over their land. The Jews were there before the Palestinians. It used to
But
be
the thing-
Judah and Samaria, correct?
Is there any Palestinian?
Yeah, no. Where'd that come from?
There's no such thing as a Palestinian. That's what gets people who don't know. But if you look back again in short-term history, what was the forerunner of the United Nations?
The Forerunner.
The forerunner. Did you know here? Okay, here's our first. Did Terry know today? Okay, so about 100 and some years ago now, the president of the United States during World War I was a guy named Woodrow Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And Woodrow Wilson came up with an idea of an organization called the League of Nations.
Mm.
And the League of Nations didn't take off here in America because our people were constitutionally literate. They knew the Constitution, they knew their duties and responsibilities as American citizens, and they didn't want a world government. What do you hear about all the time now today? A world government.
Yep.
So the League of Nations didn't fare well, but one of the things that they came up with was a land deal that the nations of the world, including most of the Muslim nations that back then were called Arab nations,
Mm-hmm.
they signed this treaty, which I'm forgetting the name of right now, back in 1923.
Mm.
And the land of Israel was to be for the Jews, and the country of Jordan was to be for the remainder of the people, which included the so-called Palestinians.
Hmm.
So the Muslim nations signed on it, Arab nations signed on it, the rest of the powers of the world signed on it. That treaty was never reneged on, but same thing, not carried out. But those people back 100 years ago, 1923, said, hey, let's let Israel be Israel for the Jews, and Jordan, the country Jordan, which is right across the Jordan River. So if you think about Israel, we need to have maps ready to pull up here, Terry, we can show people. But if you got in your mind Israel, and you got the Sea of Galilee, and from the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea is the Jordan River.
Yeah.
So on the one side was Jordan, and on the one side was Israel, and that was the divider line. But what happened in 1967? There was the 6-Day War that was premeditated by the guy named Nasser, Nasser. He was the president of Egypt and also the head of that time, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, I believe it was called. And he wanted to be the big man on campus and go after the Jew. And every day they did maneuvers, and our government at that time, the United States government, led by President Lyndon Johnson, in talks with the high-level Israeli guys, the Israelis saw that we weren't going to be any help. So they put some new people in, including their famous General Moshe Dayan. He convinced them that, hey, they had to shoot first and ask questions later. And so they attacked, the Israelis attacked Egypt first, destroyed 98% of the Air Force on the ground, which allowed them to handle the other side, Syria and Jordan and those guys. But we're in this issue today where, as you said a few minutes ago, kids in universities, mostly taught by liberal-minded people, left-leaning people, they're not telling them the whole story. And these kids aren't learning the true history of that land. And so they're showing up protesting things they don't really have a clue on.
I saw a video from a Latin young girl. She was a young lady protesting, and was asked by the reporter, "What are you protesting?" She's like, "I don't know. So I was just told to come here." He's all, "Where are you from?" "Colombia." He's like, "I just crossed the border, and they told me to come here and protest. I have no idea what I'm protesting." Isn't that sad? That's sad, what's going on right now.
They probably paid her some money to show up, and here's you know, 50, 100, you know, Franklin, something, show up and make some noise. Get on the TV.
So this is all political. political stunt, but Hamas is the one that invaded Israel last year, October 7th. Do your research. Research this, people. If you don't believe us, it's on the internet. They're the ones that went in, invaded Israel, and killed about 13 to 1,600 people.
1,300 Israelis, men, women, children. There is a show coming out here very soon called Screams Before Silence. And they have rescued scores of Israeli women.
Wow.
That have been gang raped by these Hamas terrorists.
Beast.
Beast. I've heard some stories I won't share with you, but people I know of the pillaging that these Hamas guys did. I've seen pictures of the girls rescued that they have the war 1,000-yard stare. They have been mentally and spiritually destroyed because of the atrocities committed upon them. And there's also, they got interviews of some of these Hamas guys they captured, just saying, hey, yeah, we did this to these girls.
Wow.
One I was particularly incensed about hearing, I won't repeat, but they ended up murdering this young girl after treating her very, very badly. And it makes you angry. And, so these kids that are protesting, they don't know the stuff that's going on. And hopefully you can see this thing when it comes out. I've seen it on Instagram, ads for it. And I think it's called Silence Before the Screams or Screams Before the Silence. And I think it'd be Screams Before the Silence because right now their story's not being told. And hopefully this can get out of this atrocities happen to these people. And right now there's 222 or 252 people still being held hostage.
Wow.
One's an American guy. One of 7 Americans, I understand, are still being held captive. They put a video out of him the other day, wherever they've got him hiding. But as time goes on, you have to figure that if they're mistreating them, abusing them, exploiting them, they're going to shoot them, kill them, and they're not going to find anybody. That's just the way these people play.
Yeah.
Because when you study what they believe in, they believe in the chief deceiver. That book says that it's okay to murder and lie if you convert or die. So, if you want to argue with us, study that book.
Yep.
And you'll see that's what it says. And my understanding is even Muhammad himself and his chief right-hand man, I want to say Abu Akbar was his name, they doubted their salvation because of the chief deceiver.
That's right.
And again, in the Bible, who was a liar and murderer from the beginning?
The devil.
Satan.
Yep.
Okay, so
Lucifer.
Here we are, watching kids protest because they don't do the homework. They don't study, and they're being taught by liberal-minded professors who are feeding them a line. And here we're at, and they're getting the airtime for it.
That's right. The word, I was just reading this right now. The word Palestine means land of the Philistines. It's interesting, huh? Land of the Philistines.